for me, so much of my experience of religion was asking you to like blindly follow a faith or believe in something without like evidence or explanation. What I love about astrology is how much like science, data, and objectivity there is. Astrology isn't a religion for me. But it's like a tool, just like someone who like studies psychology uses that to interact and engage or interpret other people. It's this interpretation of an observed pattern. We go back, like way back, 21 years back. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Kelly. And we have been friends long enough to know that that kind of connection is rare.
We've recognized a pattern that we can come together feeling overwhelmed and jaded by life, but can walk away from our conversations feeling elevated and fulfilled. Our goal is to have our listeners share in that experience with each episode.
This podcast is our love letter to each other. It has been years in the making, and finally the stars have aligned, and we like to open up our conversations to you. We intend to build a community where no topic is off the table.
In a world where discomfort is actively avoided, therapy is not accessible to many, yet you should talk to a therapist, is a reflex response that denies connection. We have found that talking it out has been a form of free therapy in itself.
We dive into topics like death, divorce, disordered eating, debt, and every taboo topic in between, all while balancing the scales with our tongue-in-cheek humor.
With that, who's ready to get taboo? Sticky.
Oh, we're sticky. I have sweat dripping down my back right now.
Yeah, we're sticky.
Yeah, that was a lot. Okay.
It's gonna be okay.
I miss that fresh air though. That fresh air was nice.
That was so lovely.
That was stunning.
A walk is needed.
I'm gonna fucking walk my tits
hips,
off later.
The way they get so locked up.
Yeah, dude, same. And like my knees get weird. The minute I start stretching out my legs, you know I'm getting sore. You ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it. What do you want to talk about?
Oh my gosh. All right. Today we're talking about astrology. Today's format, I feel like we should share, is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have noticed throughout the last few every episode that little Miss Chloe here speaks a lingo known as astrology. And it is a part of like, I would say our vernacular. I have things to say about that, like eventually in this episode, but really like it is your language. It is how it is your scope and how you see the world. And I think that if it's going to be a regular, we thought that if it's going to be a regular part of the podcast, we should do a little background on it. So this is kind of a Chloe, like I'm going to be here, but we're interviewing Chloe a little bit today and just like having a convo about astrology because it's here. Yeah. And she's here to stay. Yeah. So we wanted to chat about it a little bit, you know?
And I think we get a lot of questions about it. We get a lot of feedback that like no one knows what the fuck am I saying.
I will say that is a lot of it. I think that it's just we want to offer like I think it's important to say that this episode isn't you being a teacher of astrology. Yeah. Everyone has Google. If they really want to learn about it, Google and podcasts, right? But I think that if you're here and you like us and you're wanting to listen to our podcast, it does need to kind of be addressed because I recognize that it could be confusing when I'm talking about something and you're like, well, Scorpio moon. And people who don't know astrology are like, huh? What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, literally just yesterday at work, we were talking about, because so like I've been kind of like starting to like just give people like little mini chart readings at work.
Oh, okay.
And someone like it was the first person in a while that had no idea what a birth chart was.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, that's refreshing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I mean, there is like astrology has taken up popularity so much in the last like 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years even. But it was just refreshing that there wasn't someone who like, that there was someone who didn't know.
I think
about it.
Well, and I will say this. I think that there is like, we've talked about this before, that there's like astrology. I don't know how long, but astrology has been around forever. And I think there is such a difference between like astrology and then like the trend, like then there's like trendy astrology. I call it Urban Outfitter astrology, which is like about 2019. It was Urban Outfitters' whole aesthetic was every jewelry plates, clothing, the jewelry itself, everything, the couch pillows they sold. Yeah. Everything had the astrological signs all over it. And people really like it blew up because not because of that, but I think a huge part of the population, it was that Urban Outfitters like popcorn astrology. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that you are a part of a community where you have told me that it is like so prevalent and so big. But I do think that there are like, at least in my population, so many people that are like, no, no, like they just are like, oh, that's like that, like really, you know, some people are turned off by it. Some people are neutral about it. Astrology is taboo.
Yeah. And I could look at their chart and tell them why they think that. But
I listen, like there are like for me personally, again, like it all depends on like who your population is or like whatever. But like, I do know astrology. I feel like when I'm with you, I use it as more of a recreational thing because I don't know as much as you do. And I didn't like you and I think both really like took a dive in it during the pandemic because we had the fucking time. And it is, for me, I love looking at people in a patterned way.
Yes.
I have a degree in psychology. Yeah. That is all psychology is looking at people and studying people. I love people and I love the weirdos out there and the weird shit people do. It makes me so fucking happy. But I admittedly, and I'm okay with this, like I fell off. And I think that you have used astrology to help you cope with like a lot of difficult things that have happened to you, and you found a love and a commitment to it that I didn't keep up with it, and it fell off for me a bit. So I think for me, it's hard for me to speak the language of astrology because I see it in a different way than you do. Like I just don't have the vernacular. I don't have the knowledge to use it in the way that you do, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So where I really like astrology, I use it I can speak to it, but I feel like I unintentionally use it in a superficial way. Whereas like you are so educated in it and like have like this whole commitment to we're just not on the same level. So that's why like I think this episode I want to kind of gear it more towards you because you have the knowledge that I don't. And I'm very against speaking about things that I don't know enough about. I speak about the things that I feel comfortable speaking about. If you ever want to talk about horror movies, I will take over that whole episode, like, or what the fuck ever. But yeah, I just thought that it would be really interesting to hear from you because you speak it more than I do.
Yeah.
In the podcast and in life. You know?
I think to speak a little bit to what you said, and we'll get into this, but it has become the way that I process and understand life events and the people in my life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I think that it'll just give people insight into like, well, why does she say these things? Like, why? Because I think we've given no background, right? And I'm hoping that that's kind of what this is it's not you teaching people about astrology, although we will have some little fun facts at the end, but more your perspective on it. And and we're not here to like change anyone's mind or convert anyone to the world of astrology, but just like open that door of like, oh,
I love that.
A new perspective, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. And also just to preface, I have no idea what she has written down.
Yeah, she's no idea what I'm going to ask her.
To prepare for this, like not even one thing, because I was too busy like avoiding everything that I needed to do and decided to like clean the garage.
I'm metaphorically spanking you for that, but it's fine.
Yeah, I did no prep work for today. I just showed up.
To be fair, I did this still asleep, slightly hungover, exhausted from driving back from Seattle all night in 15 minutes. So I don't know how in depth and dope these questions are going to be. So we're rolling with it, babe.
We'll roll with the punches.
We are rolling with the punches here.
So,
okay. So I guess my first question for you is, it's going to be broad, but I can frame this.
Okay.
Why astrology? When did you start studying it? And how has it benefited not only your understanding of yourself, but the understanding of others?
Yeah.
So the why first, and then how it has been a benefit or added to your life when how you see yourself and other people.
Yeah. I think so. I can go like way back to being a kid and when people still had newspapers delivered.
Amazing.
The only section I cared about was the astrology section.
Yeah.
My horoscope and the weather.
Yeah.
So
sick, brother.
I don't know why I was so obsessed with the weather report.
Yeah. Well,
but now, like fast forward to now, like if you look at astrology and the way I use it, you're like you can look at the transits happening, which we'll get into that. But it basically is like the astrological weather.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that those two things ended up being like kind of married anyway.
Yeah.
So it started, I think back then there was always a curiosity for it. And my parents just always like supported it. And so it was always just like, oh yeah, like, you know, I knew what my sign was. I knew there was just kind of like an acceptance of just basic horoscope astrology.
Sure.
Sun sign horoscope astrology in the house growing up. So there's that. Your mom has always kind of like known quite a bit. And I remember like when we were 19, it was like after our first year or my first year of college, your second year of college.
Yeah.
Cause you started early. And I was home for the summer and she pulled out her ephemeris, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's like I compare it to like the Farmer's Almanac. Yeah. Basically, or it's basically this reference. It's a book where you can reference the dates and it has like where all the planets are at what degree for that date.
Yeah.
And so that's how people used to map out a birth chart was with an ephemeris.
Right.
And it's math and it's calculations and all the things. But she told me that, oh, your moon is in Leo. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And told me, you know, I have like, I think she was the one who told me Taurus rising, but that took me a while to come back to and remember. But that was kind of what first like opened that door.
Like there's more to astrology than just your
my
sun sign. Which is key.
And it was cool too, because then I started to recognize like the patterns of people in my life. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of Leos in my life. And I didn't know the connection there or whatever. Leo is also the opposite sign to Aquarius, which has its like influence there. But having a Leo placement myself, I'm like, oh, that makes sense why I like resonate with other Leos so much, because I emotionally can connect with you on some level. At that very basic astrology, there's that.
Well, and I think even we have to like go back a little bit and explain that like opposite signs, like there is a like astrological calendar, like each like month. I really shouldn't be the one speaking on this, but like 2 signs typically are assigned to each month.
Yeah. I would say, because it's hard.
I'm not as good at this.
It's basically from the end of about the 20s.
Don't get too into the lore.
No, I'm not. Yeah, no. But like about the 20s, like the 20th, 21st of the month, to about that same time on the next month.
Right.
So it is a month-long period
that a sign sits in, lives.
The sun transits through a sign.
Which transit is move.
Yeah, moves through a sign. Yes. So from our perspective on Earth, this is how all of this is calculated. From our perspective on Earth, it appears to us from where we sit on Earth that the sun is in this part of the sky, which is in this sign.
Right.
So when you say I'm born on, at February 8th, you're born when the sun was in that month-long period in Aquarius. So you identify as an Aquarius that way.
Right.
But also on that day, depending on where you were born, what time you were born, what year you were born, all those things, there's also all the other planets in the solar system that were in respectively other signs all around the zodiac. There's 12 signs of the zodiac.
Well, and I think, okay, before we get to, finish that sentence, I am going to have you clear all of that up.
Yeah. No, I just want to finish this thought and then we'll go back I'll answer the rest of your question.
Of like, how is a Leo and Aquarius opposite? I think is what I want you to clear up. What makes them opposite?
Okay. So, what I want to finish this thought though, so it's not just open-ended, but, so there's like, you have all these other placements on those days. What happens is like so you have like, let's say your half birthday is 6 months away from your birthday. That sign is the opposite sign on the axis.
Okay. That's what I wanted to clear. Like it is on an axis.
Yeah.
And
so
it's
circle,
like,
and it's a circle when you put it in a chart.
Yeah.
But, so every sign has its like opposite sign or the sign that is on the other end of the axis. So Leo is the opposite to Aquarius. Libra is the opposite to Aries, and so on.
Okay. Just wanted to clear that up. And, because I think I think that I know enough that when you and I talk about it, sometimes like I don't even recognize until I like go back, or like I've gotten feedback that's like, I don't even know what that means. So I'm trying to like be better about like being aware of when we start talking about things in a way that I'm like, people don't know what the fuck that means, you know?
So anyway, to answer the rest of this first question of like why I got into it. So your mom tells me like, okay, you have this Leo moon placement.
Yeah.
And so that kind of just like opened the door. And then following that, I got a tarot reading, but she used a lot of astrology in it and referenced my moon and my sun and even like my rising a bit. And so that got me even more interested. And then I just started like kind of pushing the envelope more and more. Then what really like kind of like was this huge kind of up level with the astrology fascination was like I started following all these meme accounts that were based on astrology. Yeah. And that helped me put into like a modern practical way, like the energy of each sign. Okay. So I was like, oh, I can understand like this about Gemini or understand this about like Sagittarius in a new way that's like funny. And that feels more like I know people in my life that act this way or like have this quality. And it was like, not so serious and literary. Yeah.
Which I think is so key in every part of life.
So that was a big one. And then after that, so I had that tarot reading. I knew about the birth chart because of your mom. And then I just started like doing more and more like research. I was looking at podcasts because I had started getting into podcasts at that time. Right. This is circa 2016. 2017. Yeah. And then so I started like getting more books and like I found like the Cafe Astrology website where you can like type in all your birth information, your birth time and everything, and it'll spit out your chart for you. So then I'm like, okay, so then I started taking notes on my chart. Right. And then I started finding books that speak to every placement in the chart. Right. So it's like it speaks to your Mars sign, it speaks to your sun sign, all these placements. And yeah. And then it just kind of like exponentially took off from there. I'll say why. So that's like kind of the how. Yeah. The why it was so interesting to me. Well, at first it was like a way to understand these different parts of myself. Right. These parts of myself that I felt like contradicted each other. It's like, okay, I really like to, like feel like I'm an individual and have a lot of independence and be alone. But I also do really well with connecting with people. Right. But that doesn't like, it's like that like kind of surface level debate of like, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Right. So like things like that where it just helped me to understand different parts of myself in a new way that was really validating. But after that, it's like, then I started to be curious about the people around me. Right. And it's like, I started to be curious about like my like closest friends, my partners, my family members, and diving into their charts. I became so curious about like their kind of makeup and their motivations. And then it kind of flipped things on its head where people that I was getting frustrated with about these like certain qualities or certain things that they would say or do or how they'd behave. And I realized, oh, that comes from this part of their chart. They have this placement and I was able to understand their motivations in a new way. Right. That I suddenly kind of like unlocked like an empathy for other people in a way that I hadn't been able to access before. Because I think before I was very like reactive, irritated, annoyed, and making it about me. Right. And then when I was able to see people in a new way, like on a deeper level, like I could almost like see through them in a way. Right. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then I was able to be like, oh, I'm not going to judge you for that because I know where that's coming from. Yeah. Like I know that this is important to you. Right. And that's the motivation for this action. So then it became about like, trying to like, then I couldn't like unsee it. Right. So then I was like, with everybody around me, I'm like, oh, I wanted to look at everyone's birth chart to help me understand like the energies and I could like find new combinations of things. And it was like a way to be less reactive towards the most like everyone's like less palatable traits. Yeah. And yesterday, actually, when I was talking to like this coworker, she was like asking about astrology and she's like, well, do you find that it creates a prejudice? And I was like, actually, no, for me, it's quite the opposite. And for all the reasons I just mentioned, but then we kind of got into because she doesn't have like TikTok or certain social medias. She's like, I have a very addictive personality, so I don't like to get on.
I love
those,
that. Self-awareness.
Like, yeah. I'm like, girl,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because she's like, because I'll just scroll and scroll. And I'm like, yeah, TikTok would be dangerous for you.
Don't do it.
So she was like, so I just got on a Reddit thread and it was talking about, because she's found out she's a Scorpio rising.
Mhm.
And she's like, all these things that people are saying about Scorpio risings are like, I knew this person or I dated. And I'm like, get off the Reddit thread. I was like, that's where people are prejudiced.
Yeah.
Where it goes back to what you're saying about kind of this like, kind of like Urban Outfitters astrology, where people are just kind of grabbing at like the low hanging fruit. And
Right.
they know one person with one placement and they are like, oh, I hate all Leos or I hate Geminis. Like, or, you know, like,
Yep.
Pisces are the worst. And it's
Right.
like, they're, the placement that they're talking to might not even be the placement that they have a problem with, but they aren't educated enough to be able to make a statement like that. And I think that's where there's prejudice.
Well, yeah. And I think that if you're going to be prejudiced towards someone, I think like to judge someone is very human. And I think it's very normal.
Yeah.
But I think that it's one of those things where like I think if you're going to make statements about people like that, like maybe just don't do it in like an astrological way unless you are really like voiced in it. Because like, I mean, even I catch myself all the time where like, I want to, it is like a psychological fact that humans want to like put everything, including people, into boxes, right? And make generalizations. And I think that, I mean, astrology, even in some way, you are kind of putting people in boxes, but like, I think it's so much more layered than people understand. And that it's so like, I don't try to educate people on astrology, but like when people start to do that, where they're like, I hate all Virgos.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, careful though.
Yeah.
You can't do the I hate a certain sign, because one, there's so much more to it than just your fucking sun sign.
The
I
one
do
sign
know
that
that.
you know about. Yeah.
And also, there's only 12 signs, babe. You're going to inevitably meet someone in your life that you're going to absolutely love and adore who is a Virgo. So instead of doing that and like hating on a fucking sign, recognize that you actually just have shit with that particular person and dive into the nitty gritty of that and not put some weird astrological label on it that doesn't really make sense.
Well, and the other part is everybody has every sign in their chart because it's a whole wheel. So like to say you hate a Virgo, I'm like, okay, well, what do you have in Virgo?
Right.
And what is your relationship with Virgo? Or, you know, like there's so many angles that you could take with it.
Right.
But I love what you said.
Yeah, I think that, and I think what's hard about astrology, and I think where I have admittedly kind of not pumped the brakes, but like stopped trying to educate myself so much, is that there really is so much to it.
Yeah.
It is
I'm constantly learning things.
Yeah, it's a not.
And I've been studying for 5 years.
It's simple. It's simple. Jesus, I meant to say the
more
opposite. No, a lot
Like
of
8
years.
years.
Yeah, no, like a lot of years. A lot of years. And I gave up. Like, admittedly, like I was like, there's so much to this. I don't have the dedication to like sit with it. And it doesn't mean that I don't like it. It just means that I was trying so hard to have such a grasp on it that I was like, this is so complicated. It really, in learning about it, I have learned that you can't, you're so much more than your sun sign. You're so much more that like, and it really, I don't even understand it, but I know that you actually can get pretty specific with it. It's not as broad as I think people think it is. And what I do like about it, to circle back to the question, is that like, I love the idea of finding something that allows you to have more empathy or patience with people. Because of this scope that you look at the world through.
And objectivity, which is really important to me with my Aquarius placements.
Right.
So I love it as a tool for all those things.
I love that. Okay. So then your daily life, from the time you wake up to the time you go to snooze.
Yeah.
How often and how intimately would you say astrology plays a role in your life, and in what ways?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say like every morning I wake up and I check my Chani app, which is an astrology app, which I recommend to a lot of people, like even at the beginner.
Chani,
Chani. It's her name, is the name of the astrologer.
Oh, okay.
But it's just also a cool name.
Yeah.
So I wake up in the morning looking like P. Diddy.
I was going to say, please finish it or I'm going to have to.
Yeah. So I check that app because she offers a really like valuable little paragraph of a horoscope for the day.
Okay.
And I just like that. I just like kind of like checking in with the weather.
Right.
Because I love a weather report.
Right. You love a weather report.
And so that's kind of like pretty much it. If something significant happens like at work, or just like if I'm noticing kind of like, oh, that's an interesting thing that just happened, I'll like check what sign is on the horizon at that moment, or I'll like jot down what the themes are that are like happening at work. Like, let's say, because there's always this like running joke in hospitals where it's like everybody's here with the GI bleed today, or everybody's here with like necrotizing fasciitis, or like this is, you know, like there's always like kind of like a trend for the day, or a lot of the times.
Yeah.
So when there are those trends, I'll jot it down.
Right. And
so I can go back later and look at the planetary alignments and kind of like understand and study and learn like what kind of transits contribute to that energy.
Right.
Because that's so much of what astrology is. It's just like studies of patterns.
I love patterns. Yes.
So that's pretty cool. Like that's a really exciting thing to do because I'm constantly like observing and learning. So that kind of is what like during the day looks like. Or if I know a specific like kind of major transit is happening, and it kind of just gives me the ability to kind of like recognize it in advance. Like I know it's going to rain today. Yeah. I'm going to bring an umbrella and I'm not going to wear flip-flops. Yeah. Like that's kind of how I can use the transit for the day. And then, I would say sometimes I'll reread my like horoscope from the morning, or check against like my, like what the transits will look like before I go to bed, and just kind of like reflect on the day. Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, would you say that astrology, like, I think it's hard. It's hard to have this conversation without explaining the nitty gritty of astrology. Because I guess what I'm interested in is like, how does astrology like play into like, you know, we talked about, full disclosure, before she went on her trip, you know, we had a really tough recording day. Yeah. Like it was a fucking garbage day. Yeah. We were at each other's fucking throats, bickering back and forth. So bitchy for no reason. For no reason. Could not figure our shit out. It was just all garbage. Stay
Recorded
tuned.
3 episodes of trash.
Of straight hot trash. And, you know, because I don't use it as a scope for all things, because I don't have all the knowledge. Like I was just like, I was fucking hot, dude. But then you were like, no. Say it. What was wrong? Yeah. So we were coming, like there's a transit that was happening where Uranus, this planet of kind of like disruption and like it can make things uncomfortable and just kind of, unpredictable, was coming up on a conjunction, which means these two planets were coming together to the same point. We'll come to that. In the sky. Come back to that later. Yeah, we'll come back to this with Mars, which is a planet of like aggression and action and like hot things. So when those two planets are coming together, it can be like irritation, it can be agitation, it can be explosive things. You kind of look at what do each of the planets like symbolize, and then like what's the Venn diagram of what's like kind of comes together with both of those lists. Right. And so that was building, which means it's just getting like more and more amplified. Like think about like a volcano before it erupts, which is also very Mars Uranus visualization. But we were like riding that energy. Right. And just to speak to more like when things are happening in the world, like on a world stage, those things are influenced or reflected by, I should say, is a better way to put it. Because I don't think of it as like cause and effect. I think of it just like as like a reflection, like as above, so below. When you have these things happening on a world stage, those same energies that are at play in the world are affecting each of us on an individual level. Okay. So I can get behind that even if I didn't believe in astrology. Right. I think that's just like the idea of like energetic. Well, and I believe in like ripple effects, right? Like things happening up here do affect all of the people down here, especially if we're talking about what I think you're about to talk about. Like anything happening that is so big and broad affects every single person on a personal level. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's also like vice versa too, because we're all being affected, all that energy coming together pushes us into these bigger world events. Right.
it contributes to it because of all the energy that we're individually feeling and being affected by. So like we get off of this day of recording and it was just absolute like trash, garbage. Like
I've never hated myself more.
I've never been so embarrassed. Dude, those will stay in the vault.
They're in the vault. And when we like Polly was saying,
if we want to humiliate ourselves.
Yeah. As like, if we were to get like a following, then we'll like as a treat be like, yo, you want to hear some fucking hot trash?
Yeah. Literally us just bickering.
And being annoyed for nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
We were just pissed off.
Yeah.
As a whole.
Yeah.
And our existence was pissed.
Yeah.
So pissed. Mad. No idea.
So we get off, like we finish the recording, we get off the mic, we both pick up our phones and like the news clip that like, or news alert on both of our phones was that like Donald Trump was shot. And that is the same energy that was like affecting our moods, but it was affecting our charts in a different way. Yeah. Which we can get to that like now or later, probably later in the
we could do it later in the episode.
So yeah, we'll come back to that. But it's like, that's the energy that we were working with that day. Just like irritable, volatile, explosive.
Yeah.
And for us, it was like affecting us in our like relationship and communication dynamics because of how it affected our birth charts.
Right. And I think that is like the major point and why I wanted to ask that is that, so from your perspective, basically anything that happens to you in your life, in the world, happening to you by proxy can be pulled back to or like can go back to astrology.
Yeah.
And that is how you are moving through the world.
Yeah.
Right. Is that it's like, instead of looking at it like, whatever, I don't have an example. I don't want to compare and contrast and make anything sound like a certain way. I'm like objectively saying here that like if something were to happen to you, if something were to happen to the world, like Donald Trump gets fucking shot in the ear, your initial instinct is going to be like, well, I'm going to look at
the astrology,
what's going on in the sky, like
correct,
to see what's going on. Yeah. Okay. And I think that that's something that's important with this, like moving forward, is that is going to be your perspective. And that, you know, as we move through this podcast, that is how it's going to like, and I'm going to do better about asking questions, obviously. But like, I think it's just important to, you know, give a little bit of perspective, and that this is why you see the world in this way. You're looking for patterns. You're looking for understanding. You're looking for, well, what's going on that I'm feeling this way? Why are you and I, who never fight, fucking at each other's throats? Over a podcast episode on Taylor Swift. Yeah. What the fuck is going on? Oh my God, that was so crazy. I could rant about that. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. So I think you've shared on the podcast before that you grew up in a Catholic household. Yeah. You went to Catholic high school. Yeah.
Catholic grade school.
Catholic everything school. Yeah. Catholic. Yeah. You know, you still have Catholic family, right? Yeah. Would it be fair to say that in this stage of your life at 29 years old, you know, I don't see you going to mass. I don't think you're like a practicing Catholic anymore. No. But would you say that astrology has kind of made its way in as your faith or theology?
I think there's comparisons that you could draw. For sure.
Because I think that's going to be my next question is like, if that's the case, how has astrology served you versus when you were more religious? Like, how is it? Yeah. How has it fulfilled you in ways that maybe Catholicism couldn't?
Yeah. So I'll say that for me, like so much of my experience of religion was asking you to like blindly follow a faith or believe in something without like evidence or explanation, and this is my experience. Right. So like to just like,
and this isn't believe in something. By the way.
This isn't at all. Because I think there's so much there's so much beauty in religion. But there's also like a lot of like pitfalls with it as well.
Yeah. We got to change some habits up in there.
Yeah. So for me, what I love about astrology is how much like science, data, and objectivity there is. Like to me, it's like, it's not really like arguable, where like when you get into theology, there's a lot of like, you could argue it this way, or it can be like interpreted in all these different ways. Right. And not to say that astrology like can't be interpreted in different ways.
That's what I was just going to ask, because people do interpret astrology differently. Yes. So how do we find that? What's the objective part of astrology and what's the part that can be interpreted? Yeah. Because I think that's where people get turned off is that like, well, this person said this about Scorpio risings, but then there's also different calendars with astrology. Like there's the Placidus.
Those are different house systems.
Different house systems. Like there are differences in it. And I think that's where the waters get murkier, where it leaves room for people to doubt it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm curious is like, well, no, I want you to finish. Sorry. My brain's sparking all of these questions because it's interesting. But like, how did it, finish up. How did it kind of make more sense or fit better for you to go the astrological route versus religion? And then how do you decipher what is objective in astrology and what's not?
Yeah. So for me with religion, there's like, I felt like there's a lot of like arbitrary rules. Like you can't eat meat on Fridays during Lent, or you can't, I don't know. There's just like all these things that I'm like, that has nothing to do with me being a good person. Like that has nothing to do with me like respecting others. And that has nothing to do with my connection to a higher power. So I think all of these other things like take you out of the spiritual connection.
You kind of lose sight of the point of it all when you have all these weird little rules that you're following, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
And also I'm an Aquarius and I can't be told what to do.
Yeah, I understand that big time. Yeah.
Just can't.
Yeah.
So
we'll get to why later, by the way.
Yeah. So, well, because it's ruled by Uranus, the rebel. But anyway, sorry, that's like not important right now. But so there's that part of religion that I did not identify with, and I felt very like caged. And I think there's like this like shame dynamic or component in that where it's like, you should be doing this because this is how you should be behaving, because this is how you should treat these, like should.
Right.
And that's tired.
Yeah.
And
shame and fear tactics are not attractive to me.
No. Yeah. And what I like with astrology is it is so objective that it's just like in the way that it's like all observed. So there's no like way of saying like you should do this, but it does offer understanding in, I don't know if that like necessarily like is a direct contrast to religion or like a, do you know what I mean?
No, I do. Yeah, I got you. No, you're being clearer than I think you are. It's making sense. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm getting a little lost in the mud here, but I think like, it's not like astrology isn't a religion for me. But it's like a tool, just like someone who like studies psychology uses that to interact and engage or interpret other people. Right. Because I think it's a easier comparison to make like astrology to psychology.
Okay.
In the way
you're studying human behavior.
You're studying patterns.
Yep.
I think it's one step removed because like there's more than just like horoscope astrology, which is the study of birth charts and people. Oh, okay. But there's also mundane astrology, which is the study of like just transits and how it affects like earthly things, like earthly events.
Right.
So
there's so many different layers to all the different parts of what astrology affects. Because then there's also like body astrology. Right. Yeah. And like all of that, like that's what I mean by it is so layered and it is so much more than just like the horoscope astrology.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think when you compare it to like a science, because it has elements of both. It has both elements of like an art or a religion. Maybe I think religion is like sticky or like muddy territory. But there's elements of both like an art and a science, which is why it kind of doesn't fit in one box or another. But I think the same thing that happens with psychology is it's this interpretation of an observed pattern.
Based on, so where do you think there is, because there is, like you just said, like a belief. I'm literally now just going off the cuff because now I'm just asking questions that I have. You said there's a bit of like a belief aspect to astrology, right? What is the
I guess the belief aspect would be like using it as a way to process or understand. I am bothered. I think not bothered, but it's like, it's interesting to me when people say they don't believe in astrology. Cause you don't really hear people say, oh, I don't believe in psychology.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there are people that feel that way, that they don't believe in it. But to me, it's like, it's not something to be believed in. It's like, it's something to be studied and to be understood. So
why do you think it hasn't been put in schools? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, and I think in other cultures it is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, like
that'd be dope.
Like there's a sect of astrology called Vedic astrology, which is more Indian and astrology, and
cool.
And it's in there like they have like a week, like how they would have like a daily weather report. They have a daily astrological report.
That's sick.
So in a lot of places it is like valued and respected, and it's not like this taboo, shameful.
It is taboo. It's so
topic,
interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
But like, when people say they don't believe in it, to me, all that tells me is like, you're not educated. You don't know what you're talking about, which, and that's not me judging and being like, oh yeah, you're an idiot.
Right.
But it's like, to me, I would like that to all that says is like, you've not like taken the time
the world of astrology.
Yeah, explored it at all. You haven't learned about it enough to understand what you're saying.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm just now you're like, I wonder why it isn't something that is taken more. Like if you're saying that it's like very objective and, you know, it literally is studying patterns. I wonder why, and maybe it's like a cultural thing that it isn't taken as a science if it's so similar to not astrology, to psychology. You know, like my question, I guess, like I just have is like where, because it has been studied for thousands of years. Am I right?
Yes,
like
thousands and thousands and thousands.
Forever.
And
like
thousands.
There's Mayan calendars and all of that shit. Where in history did it fall off as being something that is taken? Like there's always been astrologers, not ist. You've told me that. We don't say astrologist, we say astrologer, right? Yeah. I think just to be very clear, it's not astrologist. It's astrologer. Fuck. See, I fucked it up again. I didn't. But I guess I'm wondering where it stopped being such a like core part of our culture or something we study and something that became like a hobby.
It ebbs and flows. So there's periods.
I'm so sorry. Can we pause again really fast? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I have to go.
Yeah, you're good.
No. Okay. So I asked you where you think in history astrology kind of lost its like daily, more like normalized, like when do you think it became taboo? And you were saying that it ebbs and flows.
Yeah. So there's different periods in history where, and I can't recall certain like dates or times off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But it's when it kind of is like up for persecution. So like when different religions come into power and there's different like kind of like reigning periods and it becomes, it's made into something to be feared.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Because it's deemed to be like a sin or of the devil or whatever it is, whatever is going on. And it reminds me in a lot of ways of like maybe the way that like the Salem witches were persecuted when like paganism became like the thing to be feared.
Right.
It's just, it kind of like comes and goes throughout different periods of history.
Okay.
But there's also like in the Bible, there's a lot of reference to astrologers and like, and to astrology. And so it's like, there's certain periods of time where things, I don't know, like the pendulum swings and then it's disregarded, translated differently, interpreted differently. And like that part of the history is kind of like rewritten or reinterpreted.
Right.
It's like, well, the three kings weren't actually astrologers. They were just, you know, they followed a really bright star.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And do you, so in your opinion right now, because like, I do think that it is so dependent on like the media you consume or the books you've read. Like it's all based on like our interests, right? And what's fueled to us. So like, I know that you are so dedicated to astrology and like listen to so many podcasts and educate yourself so much. Would you say like objectively we're in more of like an ebb or flow with how people feel about astrology right now?
I would say we're more in a flow.
Okay.
I know that there's kind of been like maybe of like the pop astrology kind of like a different wave, but like in general, there's been a huge influx of younger astrologers and like people who are like truly studying the science,
all of it.
And And where like before there was like a real lack of, maybe since the 70s, from the astrologers that I listen to and who have been around long enough to like speak to the ebbs and flows. Right now we're in a massive uptick, like an upswing of young people. And I feel totally a part of that wave.
Right.
Like my Twitter is literally just an astrology account. Like I only follow astrologers. I only tweet about astrology things. I haven't really been active on it for a while, but there's like a massive community of like people who are actually
in it. Do you
Yeah.
think that astrology gives you a sense of community?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. Totally. Like that was the first time I was like, oh, I actually think Twitter's dope.
Yeah.
Like I never really got it or understood it or like felt like I had anything to say.
Right.
Until like I really started to understand astrology.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, this is a really fun space to like connect with people who think in the same way that I do. And then like to take it one step further, like my therapist now is also an astrologer. She's a psychologist and an astrologer. And it gives me the ability to like have this like specific language that I can speak with her. Like I liken it to a nurse being able to talk to another nurse because there's certain language that you use or like in the medical field.
Right.
I liken it to that. So anybody who has that experience or understands what that's like might be able to understand like, oh, what it's like to talk to another astrologer.
Right. Because it is like niche, right? And I think that like fits perfectly into like kind of my next question I had. And like, I think one of my last ones before we get into like some like fun fact things. Okay. Because not everyone is a practicer. I don't know if that's the right word.
Practicing astrologer.
Yeah. Like I would say everyone in my circle except for you. And this is just, I can only speak to my circle. My circle is very small. So like, this doesn't mean anything, please. But nobody in my life except for you speaks that language. And so how do you navigate having like, you see the whole world in the scope of astrology, you speak in the language of astrology. How do you move through the world, speaking in the language that you do and having this understanding of astrology that you do when a lot of people in your world don't? Like, how do you feel like, cause like, you know, you'll say things that are like astrology based, but then like, do you feel like you have to explain it? Or like, do you just say it understanding that maybe they have no idea what you're talking about, but you know what you're talking. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Like there's gonna be a communication barrier there.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. That's been a learned thing over the last few years. Cause I think that there was like a period of time where I didn't know how to speak in any other language except astrology.
Yeah.
And that was really off-putting. So not that I don't think much better, but I've learned when it's appropriate and like who my audience is.
Oh, okay.
And so with certain audience, like what I can say.
Yeah.
So like, I know with you, I can get a lot more technical.
Yeah. You can say things and I can like, yeah.
With like, for instance, like Polly or Kevin, they love it and they're so curious about it. They don't know a lot, but they're like, wait, tell me more. Because I'll say kind of like well, there's certain things at play right now that are contributing to this.
Right.
And I'll just kind of like be a little bit more broad or more surface. And if they invite me to say more, then I will.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of like getting out at work that like I can like, you can do that I have this party trick, I guess.
Yeah.
And so more people are kind of seeking it out, which I do struggle with a little bit because it does take a lot of energy.
I was going to say, playing that teacher role, how does that feel for you?
And it's not necessarily playing a teacher role as much as it is like to read someone's chart requires a lot of thinking, a lot of like interpretation, a lot of brain power. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't have the capacity for it. Which especially I at work because it is so involved. And it's like, I also have a job to do. And so it's like, sorry, I have to stop talking to you because I have to answer this call light.
Right.
And sometimes I just don't have the capacity to like get into it on a deep level. Like, I want to.
Right. Well, that's the thing that's hard is you have such a passion for it, right? That it's hard to speak on it. I mean, I think even now it's like, I want to have this like in-depth conversation, but like, it's so hard to not get in the lore. Like I want to,
because it's complex. I found this happening yesterday or just a lot in general. It's like, for instance, the Christmas present I like gave to people this year was a birth chart reading.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so hard for me to not go to every depth and detail, I have completely like resisted and avoided like giving people their birth chart readings because I'm like, I just have more to say, but I don't have the time or the capacity to go like that in detail or that in depth. I forget that whatever I give you is more in depth than what you know.
Correct.
So it's hard for me to like find that line of like what is like enough to give, where I feel like I've truly like given you a true understanding or interpretation versus like what's too much for you.
Right.
And then like it's a hard line.
I can't even imagine. That's why I asked it. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Cause you know, you obviously want to like communicate with the world in a way where people understand you. That's quite literally the point of language. But like, so it's like, what about, I guess my next question that is connected to that. And I think this is kind of my last one before we get into like kind of like
fun.
I'm going to ask you like the fun questions or like the things that I feel like are like very important because this is my fucking interview.
Yeah.
Okay. There's going to be people. I know there's been people in your life that you approach. There could even be listeners at some point that are like, I don't like astrology. Yeah. Astrology's bullshit.
Yeah.
Do the, you know, if you will, like it's just the stars in the sky. You've heard all the shit.
Yeah.
That's their right.
Yeah,
right. That's their,
totally.
Nobody has to follow astrology if they don't want to. So how do you interact with those people and how do those people make you feel? Obviously it's upsetting.
Yeah.
Right. Or triggering in some ways because it's like, well, this is how you view the whole fucking world.
Yeah.
So that's why like, I think it's so important to be like, hey, this is a part of our podcast. Like, this is how you are as a person. And I love that. So like, that's valid and real. But then there's also people that are valid to be like, it doesn't fit me. Yeah. So how do you interact with those people? Like, obviously there's a scale. There's people that are like, that's fake. And that's hurtful because I do think it should be treated a little bit like a belief system or like whatever the case. Yeah. Like a core part of who
I think that's
are.
where you can compare it to a religion.
Right.
Because like I would never go up to someone and be like, I can't believe you practice Hinduism.
Right.
Oh my God. What a load of shit.
Right.
I can't believe that you not only grew up Catholic, but are still Catholic. Yeah. How embarrassing. Like you would never say like anything along those lines. Right. I mean, there are people, but like,
generally speaking, there's a rule.
A well-adjusted human would never.
That's like a rule of
it's not tolerated.
Yeah, you don't question someone's faith.
Yeah. And so in the same light, I think that's where you can compare it to a religion. Okay. Is like that's kind of pig-headed and ignorant of you to come up to me and say like, you seriously believe that a bunch of floating rocks in the sky can like have any effect on you as a person? Right. And I'm like, I'm not here to argue why. I don't understand why either. And that's like where you could get into like theorizing and kind of debate or whatever. I don't understand that. Yeah. But what I do understand, what I can recognize and acknowledge are the inarguable patterns. Sure. You can't argue it. Sure. You can't argue the data. So, or I mean, I guess you can. Yeah. You can.
But anyone argues anything now.
Yeah. But that's where like the evidence is, right? It's like I don't know, I guess this is actually helpful because it's like there's people who have like the theory that dinosaurs never existed. Right. But it's like, okay, but like we have fossils.
Okay, but bones.
So it's like someone can make an asinine argument about anything. Right. But like the fact is we have the bones. Right. We have the evidence when it comes to astrology. So like my more recent approach to a response is because it's been hard for me to like articulate how to respond or be secure enough in myself to have a response. Right. But I just said this to someone recently because they were like, oh yeah, what a load of shit. I don't believe in that, whatever. And I'm like, you sound pretty uneducated. Yeah. Sounds like you don't know what you're talking about. Right. And they doubled down and so did I. I was like, yeah, again, you sound like really uneducated. I think if you took the time to learn or to study, you would have a different belief or a different approach.
Right. Well, and I think that is where it's interesting. Like, I think that is what, I guess I just wish, and I'm sure you're in the same boat as me. I guess I just wish I understood astrology is taboo. I hear you that there is an uptick of young astrologers and people coming up and there is like a whole ass community and there is a like big group of people that use this as a lifestyle. You're not the only one. And I, think that people aren't aware of that. But also, where did it get taboo? It pisses some people off.
Yeah.
I have listened to podcasts. I have seen TikToks of people who just get so angry at it. And I think it's very bad and not okay. I'm always going to be this person. And this is like what makes me annoying. And it's going to happen in our Taylor Swift episode inevitably. What I will say is like, I am not the most educated person in astrology. I wouldn't say I use it as a scope of how I see the world, but I love to study people and patterns. So I do use it, but I also use like the millennial, Gen Z, I love patterns of people and there are patterns there too. I could like explain the astrology to that too. Yeah, you know? Libras love patterns and like, I'm a sucker for fucking patterns and people. So like
there's astrology to the generations.
Right. You know, exactly. And so like, I'm fine with that. But I think that there is something to be said. I had this thought the other day when I was like, well, I didn't prepare these questions the other day, but I was just thinking about astrology and like why it could be considered taboo. I think it's so interesting how astrology, generally speaking, big sweeping generalization here, is like a feminine thing.
Yeah.
It's typically female. There's a lot of men. It's marketed toward females. There we go. We'll say that. I think that has something to do with the amount of hate it gets. Sorry, I do. Because I think that there are things marketed towards more traditionally, no gender roles meant here, but like more traditionally like men things. Yeah. That are fucking weird. Yeah. Have you seen competitive slapping contests?
I could have gone without knowing that that's a thing.
That's a thing. I saw it on the television and I was like, okay, so now, and like, whatever, if you're into it, rock on, brother. But what I'm saying is that that doesn't evoke anything in anyone the way that like women loving astrology does. And it's just like Taylor Swift. I do think that I'm not like saying like, fuck people that don't believe in astrology, believe in whatever or like practice astrology. If it's not your thing, I love that for you. But it's interesting that astrology does get dragged. Yeah. And I think it does have something to do with the fact that it is, for some reason, even in my own head, it's a girl thing. Yeah. I don't know why, maybe because that's how it's been marketed toward me. But like, I don't know a ton of men that are like, fuck yeah, astrology, and know it like to the depth that you do. Yeah. They exist.
Because I think that there's like this meme culture around like dating and like meeting the astrology girl who asks for the birth time. And then he asks his mom and his mom's like,
that's just so funny from her. No, I know. It's fucking hilarious. It's fucking hilarious. But yes, yeah.
But there's like, it's also interesting too, because it's like if a guy was like super into astrology and like a lot of the astrologers historically that have been like really prominent in the field are all male.
I wouldn't have known that.
And like a lot of the astrologers that I do follow are male. Like I wouldn't say majority, but I would say it's very at least balanced in the astrology community.
Right.
But what's interesting is like if a guy, like let's say like Kevin was super into astrology, people would be like, oh, that's fucking dope. Tell me more. When a girl's into astrology, she's a kook. She's a witch. She's a nut. Yeah. She's basic. Like, ugh, you're one of those astrology girls. Like even Hannah Berner has like a bit about like she's that New York comedian. She has the
I know who you're talking about. Yes. Yeah. She's so funny. Yes.
Fucking hilarious. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. She does the Hannah in the Streets or whatever.
Love her.
Yeah. She was even talking about, she had this bit where it's like, if you want a guy to leave you alone at the bar, start talking about astrology and cats. Yeah. Like nothing will like turn a guy off more than like you being like, yeah, I'm a Libra. Like it's not going to work here. You're giving me the ick.
Yes.
Like, you know, and like guys are like, oh God, another astrology girl. Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah. But it goes back to, and I think why another thing I wanted to touch on that you said is like people getting so angry. It has that same quality that religion invokes where people get so angry about it. Yeah. But I think it comes back to a lack of understanding. And that really is just like a fear of the unknown. Right. So when I can see how someone would be so frustrated by the why does this work? But like, I think to hyper focus on like, why does every time that Mars and Uranus make a conjunction, these things happen? Or why is it that every time Saturn and Pluto make these aspects to each other, we end up in a pandemic? Like, why, like trying to like make sense of the why is like less important than the like just the observation and the studying of it does. So we can watch for these patterns,
right,
and prepare better for what's coming or understand the energy at play. That's the other thing. Like when you look at a transit, which is, we can get into the vocabulary of it, but it's like the planets that are in the sky right now where they are, when they're moving, that's like considered a transit. So it can make angles and aspects to your personal chart from when you were born, or just like them making aspects to each other. Geometry, it's all geometry. It has influence over like what is occurring.
Right.
What was my point there?
Something.
What was I saying?
The minute you asked the question is when I lose my brain. Hold on. So you were saying aspects, geometry. Fuck.
Like the why.
People getting angry
about the why.
Religion.
But instead of, I remember. So the transit itself, I can look at the transit and be like, oh, this is going to last for this amount of days, weeks, months, years, right? And I can see the timing, and then I can also look at the planets, the signs, all the things, the energy, basically, that's at play. And it helps me process, I know how long this is going to be going on for. It doesn't feel like this inevitable situation. Like I know that, okay, I'm going to be like, there's going to be a highlight on my finances for this year. And then it'll move into a different part of my chart.
Right.
I know that like this really like tough transitional period is going to last for 18 months.
Jesus.
And I know that it's going to be like, I'm going to be making strides through those 18 months, but they're going to be really fucking hard.
Right.
So it helps me not feel like this is just like this existential place of doom. Like, when is it ever going to end? I can be like, oh, these themes, this energy is going to be like worked through
for X amount of time.
Yeah, for this amount of time.
And
that's really helpful.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I can
gives
see
me
it
finish
being a
lines.
tool. Yeah.
And it gives me like a tool to work with. Like, okay, I'm supposed to be focusing on like self-development in this area for this amount of time. And it helps me like actually focus on that and use the energy at play.
So what do you think you're like, okay, we have a podcast together where you're talking very like fluidly in astrology. How do you approach that? Are you like thinking about the list, like, oh, well, like if I say something about astrology, like in your brain, are you like, I need to be ready to explain that? Or are you kind of like, I'm going to let it rock. And then if people in the comments have something they want to ask about it, I'm going to be like ready to answer that. Like what, as a podcast host, are you doing it? Because this isn't an astrology podcast. So if there's listeners who are listening who don't speak the lingo, what should we do with that?
I think it's my responsibility if I'm going to use it in a setting where it's not the focus. Okay. It is my responsibility to offer explanation or to not speak in such technical terms.
Sure.
At the same time, I don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's true. You're not going to know everyone's.
I don't know everybody's level, and people are coming
at
this from totally different levels of experience and understanding. So if there's something that you don't understand, you are a individual who is responsible for your own learning.
Right.
And also it may not be something that you're curious about.
Yeah.
So like whether or not you want to go out and like educate yourself more in this area is not really like, that's not my responsibility or not my business.
Totally.
But if I'm going to use it and speak in it regularly, especially when I'm speaking to you, like I think I'm going to speak more to like a little bit your level of understanding and maybe like a little bit, even maybe someone who's just like a step or two below that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's just,
well, I mean, I think if it's a part of how you see the world, it is going to just sometimes flow out of you. And I think that I'm going to try and like ask the questions or like be aware of it. But like, I just, I think it's interesting, like having this conversation, like it's almost like a tricky place to be in with astrology because it isn't like a widely accepted, science system.
Because it's not widely understood.
Practice. Right. So like, I feel like if you are an astrologer, I would be so curious to ask like every major astrologer, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do when you're having a conversation? Like say you're friends with someone who's just like, I don't follow any of that and choose to not do the research or like ask questions. Like people that you encounter that like are just like, all right, she just said I'm a Scorpio moon. I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't care to learn it. What do you do? Because I think
it's the same way I approach like nursing language. Like I know when it's appropriate to use and when to explain.
Like know your audience, like you said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like when I'm speaking to another nurse,
you can just go to town.
I know. And I can say like random details that to you wouldn't make any sense.
Sure.
Also, if I do say something that I forget is not a regular term, like you can be like, hold on, what is that? Right.
Yeah.
But also I just like, there's a specific part of nursing school where we are educated on like patient interaction and patient family interaction and it had the importance of not using medical jargon.
Okay. Yeah.
When it's not appropriate.
Right.
So, I think it's kind of the same principles apply to this.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, totally. Like using the language as you see fit because you have an astrologer's brain, but like knowing what you should or shouldn't say or not shouldn't say, but what will be
helpful,
most palatable for the listeners who don't know a lot.
Yeah. And just like anybody who has like an area of expertise, like you're always going to like see the world kind of through that lens,
of
just
course.
inevitably.
Yeah.
So like, there's gonna be like just anybody like I heard the argument like in the medical field, like a surgeon is always going to argue for surgery. Yeah. Like a cardiologist is always going to argue through the lens of like what is going to be helpful or understand it through the heart. Right. So in that way, like just like you have your areas of expertise, you like bring that into your interpretation experience of the world. That's kind of the same thing that I'm
totally
doing here.
I love that. Yeah. I think that offers up a lot of clarity too. Like it really does just like show your perspective and like the deep level of understanding that you have and that like it is a passion. It is in your vernacular. Like this is how you speak. And I think that it's like just like having that balance between like, well, this is like what's so important is there are so many different levels of understanding with astrology, right? Like you and I can talk about astrology, but where I'm someone that like, I would say I know more than the average Joe on the street. Absolutely. You know a ton. But the minute you get into it, I'm like, fuck, I don't know any. That's why like, honestly, for me, I'm nervous to talk about it because I don't identify as seeing it as like my major scope of how I see the world. Cause I think that's always evolving. Right. And I think there've been points in my life where I've really used astrology as my scope. And then there's times where I like kind of walk away from it. Yeah. I mean, and to like use some astrology jargon, I have a 9th house stellium, which speaks to my, I can break that down. Yeah. But that placement that I'm speaking to speaks to my, ability to see the world or the lens through which I look at the world is through an astrological interpretation. See, and that's so specific. And I think that's why that is a perfect way to transition. Let's break down some of the basics of astrology. Okay. I have a little list because we're not going to make this a 2-hour episode talking about astrology things. My list is small. I think the things that should we do it like a little more rapid fire style? Okay. Cool. So what are the signs? How many are there? What are they? Yes. And let's give like now I'm going to make it a game. Okay. Because she's a dork. Okay. We're making it a game just really fast. Sorry. Okay. But like I love this. I can't take this too seriously. Okay. No. So you're going to give me the sign in the order of the calendar starting from the zodiac calendar starting from the first to the last because it's different than ours, guys. Fun fact. Yeah. And then so give me the sign and give me like one word to describe that sign. Oh, okay. Are you ready? Yeah. Start with one, work your way through. Okay. Aries. Should I say, I think it's also important to mention Aries is like the start of the zodiac. Obviously. Because it is the start of spring when new life begins. Oh, yeah. See, I didn't know that. That's cute. Yeah, it is pretty cute. That's adorable. Okay. One word to describe them. Uninhibited. And give me their like symbol. The ram. Cute. It's a fire sign. Yeah. It's a cardinal fire sign. So there's a element to each sign also. So there's the sign, there's the symbol of the sign, there's the element of the sign, and their modality. The modality. So what? Okay. And then we'll get through that because those are on my list, by the way. Okay. So We'll get through what the element and what the modality means. Bear with us. Okay. After Aries,
we have Taurus.
the symbol,
Is a bull
the
or a
word,
cow. Relentless.
cute.
Yeah.
The element,
Earth.
the modality.
Fixed. Because it's the middle of the spring season.
Okay.
When everything's in bloom, not when it's starting to bloom. It's when you're actually bearing fruit.
Cute. And also the goal of this, as we're playing this game, I think if you're interested in astrology, taking note of what, like if these signs are in your chart in any way, take note of that because it matters.
Yep.
After Taurus,
We have Gemini.
give me the symbol,
Is the twins.
give me the word.
Curious.
Oh,
Ooh, one step further.
Mhm.
What's the word I'm looking for? It'll come back to me. I'll find it and then I'll mention it. But that's, curious.
give me the element
Air.
and give me the modality.
Mutable, because we're changing now from spring into summer.
Cute. Okay. After Gemini,
We have Cancer.
give me the symbol,
Is the crab.
give me the word.
Is nostalgic.
Oh, give me the element
Water.
and give me the modality.
Is cardinal, because now we're beginning a new season. We're beginning the summer season.
And see how there's already patterns here.
Yeah.
Patterns, people. All right. After Cancer,
We have Leo.
give me the symbol,
Is the lion.
give me the word.
Authentic.
Give me the element
Fire.
and give me the modality.
Fixed, because we are now in the middle of summer.
Balls deep summer.
Yeah. Balls deep
Sweaty
summer.
balls
Sweaty balls.
the whole time.
Yeah.
After Leo,
Is Virgo.
ooh, give me the symbol.
Is the virgin.
Give me the word.
Refine.
Give me the element
Earth.
and give me the modality.
Mutable, because we are now changing from summer into fall.
Transitions.
Transition. Mutable are the
transition.
transitions.
Got it.
I think malleable. Like it's like now the clay is like we're
Molded.
able to
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah.
Shape
We're
shift.
able to shape it into what we want it to. After Virgo,
Is Libra.
give me the symbol.
The scales.
Give me a word.
This is a good one. There's like a lot. Strategic.
Yeah. Give me the element
Is air.
and give me the modality.
Cardinal, because we're beginning fall.
Yeah. She's the start of fall.
She's the start of fall.
After Libra,
Is Scorpio.
give me the symbol.
Is the scorpion.
Give me the word. I'm curious what you're going to do here.
This is a good one. There's a couple that I'm throwing around, but it's like I want the combination of those two words. Let's see. Ardent.
Ooh.
Which is kind of like speaking to like this ability to like relentlessly get to the depth of something.
Yeah. I love that. I think that was a perfect word for it. I was going to say passionate, and I feel like, but there is like a relentlessness there.
Yeah.
I don't want to bore anyone. Anyway, sorry. Element
Is water.
and modality.
Fixed water, because we're in the middle of fall.
Yeah, isn't that so
holds the
crazy?
season.
It really does. Okay, next one.
Sagittarius.
Yeah. Give me the symbol.
Is the it's a what is the it's technically like the bow and arrow, but it's also the, what is the word for it? Like the man
I don't want
torso.
to say centaur.
Centaur. It is a centaur. Yeah. I couldn't find the word, but it's
centaur.
the like the human body torso.
With the horseman.
Like
bottom.
it's instead of a horse, it's a horse, but instead of a head, it's a human down to their torso.
Yes, correct. And they're bow and arrow, shooting
Correct.
a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
So sign, symbol, word.
Performer.
Element,
Fire.
modality.
Mutable, because now we're changing from fall into winter.
Love it. Love that sign.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is
Capricorn
symbol.
is the mermaid goat.
The sea goat.
The sea goat.
If
Yeah,
you
that's
will.
a better way to put it.
Yeah, sea
the
goat.
sea goat.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sea goat.
Yeah.
The word
Is tenacious.
that's a dope word.
Yeah.
The element,
Earth
modality,
is cardinal because we're
balls.
beginning
Oh yeah.
winter.
Yeah. And then after that,
We have Aquarius.
love.
We love
What's
Aquarius.
the symbol?
Is it's like the water bearer. So it's like this, it's a vase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the vase, it's not the water that's flowing out of the vase. It's like anything that the vase can hold.
Right. Correct.
So it's the vessel.
okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Is that the word what word would you use to describe Aquarius?
Inventive.
And element?
Air.
And I think people get that confused.
Yeah.
Because their symbol is the water flowing out of the
That's a
base.
huge misconception. And it
Yeah.
sounds like aqua Aquarius, but
yep.
it's like that which holds water.
Yeah, exactly. It is very air.
So yeah, it's an air sign and it's the modality is fixed.
Yep.
Because we're the middle of
Mm-hmm.
winter.
All the things.
Fixed air.
You're a very fixed person.
Hey,
Jesus.
says you.
I know. Okay. And then this is the last sign.
Yeah, the last sign of the
Which
zodiac is Pisces.
Okay. Symbol.
Is the two fish swimming in
69ing.
opposite directions. The 69 symbol is actually the Cancer.
No, I know.
Like-
I wasn't
But
even
the fish are 69.
No, the fish are just actually 69ing. I wasn't even
I don't blame
Cancer.
them.
There's like also like symbols for each sign that
Yeah.
we didn't get into, and Cancer is 69. I just meant that the fish are both going down on each other.
Correct.
What is a word for Pisces?
This is a good one. The first one that came to mind is imaginative,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like that's doing them a little bit of a disservice. We'll go intuitive.
Okay, I love that. Yeah,
I think that's a
intuitive is
little bit
good.
more accurate.
What is their element
They are water,
and their modality?
mutable water, because now we're ending winter and moving back into spring at the top
Right.
of the zodiac with Aries again.
And so, yeah, just to be clear, with the zodiac calendar, it starts with spring. It starts with Aries in
Yeah.
March.
Because that's when life begins.
Yes. Instead of like, because of school, my brain, like, first of all, like our calendar year starts in January. For me, it's always September.
Yeah.
Which is so
It's
fucked
like
up.
so weird.
Everything's all
Who made
fucked
all
up.
these arbitrary rules?
Fucking
yeah.
the time is a concept, and we're not going to go down that
Yeah.
hole because I'll start talking
Yeah.
about all my nerdy shit. Okay, so I do want to wrap this up. I know this is getting long, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so go through the planets and give me like generally like
Yeah.
planets rule
Yeah.
certain aspects of our being, our personality, and just life in general.
Correct.
So go through.
We'll start with Aries. So Aries is ruled by Mars.
Uh-huh.
Aries is the warrior,
Yeah.
and Mars is the warrior planet. It rules things that are like hot, cutting. It's like
Aggression.
drive, aggression. It can be war.
It
so
can
the
be
warrior.
sex,
It
right?
can be sex.
Mhm.
It is ego.
Right.
So
then
then
when-
the planet, it's also associated with the color red, and the planet itself has a red color.
Right.
And there's a gash along the surface of the planet, which is like very
That's cute.
like on brand
Yeah.
for like what it rules. Cause like to slice yourself with a knife is a very Martian.
Right. Thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, and so then I also just want to clear up, like, say that if you're looking at your birth chart and say like my Mars is in Leo, it means that Mars is, generally speaking, Mars rules like aggression, sex, all of the things that you were talking about. But then if Mars were to be, when I was born, in the sign of Leo, it means that all the things that Mars covers that you just said are going to have Leo traits to it.
Yeah. They're going to be expressed in a Leo way.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think what I'm getting at when I talk about the planets is like not going through each sign and what it rules, but like what does each planet itself cover? Like,
Yeah.
what does Jupiter rule in your life? Like,
Yeah.
what is, okay.
But it's also important to talk about which sign it does rule. I think.
Okay.
No?
So no. So let's just go through, but like to break it down, like so it's faster instead of going through all 12. Wait, are there 12 planets? No, there's 9 planets.
Yeah.
So we'll go through each. I'll say the planet, and then you say what signs are ruled by it, and then what they kind of the properties that they have. Does that make sense?
I think we should go through the same way we went through the zodiac. And
Okay.
Because then, and I'll you'll see why.
Okay. All right. So then what's Taurus?
Taurus is ruled by Venus.
Okay.
And Venus is the planet of like love, aesthetic, luxury. Think Venusian things are going to be like anything that's like comfortable or beautiful or enjoyable.
Right.
Like the classic like image of the person like lounging on the chase with like grapes and like everything's like stunning and beautiful.
Right. Yes.
Anything that tastes good. Yeah. And okay, so here's where we'll do some jumping. Venus also rules Libra.
Right.
So which is the other like Venusian sign. Right. So yeah, I guess maybe
do you see where it can be confusing?
I do. Okay. Yeah.
So I thought it would be better to just go by the planets and then have the signs fall into it. Because then we're going to jump around and the calendar is going to get fucked up.
Okay. So we have Mars and we have Venus.
Right.
And I think that's cool about Mars and Venus is that Mars is generally speaking rules things that are masculine and Venus typically rules things that are feminine.
Well, are there any other planets that are ruled by Mars that we missed, or is it just
Scorpio?
Aries? So Aries and Scorpio
are ruled by Mars.
Yeah. And then Mars in general is like aggression, sex,
ego, cutting, war.
Cool. Right. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Then Venus is Taurus and Libra, all things aesthetics, beauty, luxurious items. Did you say love?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Love. And money.
Yeah. And then after Venus is Mercury.
So Mercury rules Gemini and it also rules Virgo.
Okay. And what are the properties of Mercury?
Mercury is all things communication and it's all things like any like modality through which you communicate. So letters, emails, texts, phone calls. It's also the news. It's also like the radio, anything that has to do with communication, and language, and like vocabulary.
Okay, dope.
Yeah,
and then after that,
inquisitive. That was the word I was going to use for Gemini.
Oh, I love that, and it did come back to you. That's poetic and beautiful.
Cute.
After Mercury is.
I don't know the order. I'm honestly really bad at this.
Okay, cool. So I just know that there's Earth.
Jupiter.
We got to skip over Earth. Earth doesn't do anything. Jupiter is
rules over Sagittarius and traditionally is the ruler of Pisces. And when I say traditional, that means before the modern ruler Neptune.
Okay.
Was discovered.
Okay.
So up until before we knew about Neptune, Pisces was co-ruled by Jupiter.
Cute. Okay. Yeah. And what is Jupiter typically?
It's an expansive gas planet. So it is like, it rules over like theology, higher education, abundance, luck, gambling. Did I already say theology?
Yeah. Is it in career? No, not career.
No. It's also astrology.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's just kind of like this, like happy-go-lucky. Whatever Jupiter touches, it exaggerates whatever it touches.
Well, what you're just describing seemed very Sagittarius to me. So that's that tracks.
Yeah.
Saturn
is
my favorite planet.
The ruler of Capricorn and also the traditional ruler of Aquarius.
Okay.
So it ruled, it was the traditional ruler of Aquarius before we discovered Uranus.
Okay.
It is like its boundaries, its structure, it is longevity. It's like it can be also limitations and isolation.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And then after that, Neptune?
Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces.
Okay.
So it's also a big, expansive gas planet. And it's kind of like, it rules over like dreams, the subconscious, things that are hidden away from society. So like,
Jesus,
like mental health and spirituality. And like, I always think of like astral travel with Neptune and with Pisces. And it's like, things that you can't tangibly describe because it rules that specifically, like things that are intangible and indescribable.
Right. Okay. I love that. I also love Neptune a lot. I love that planet. I think it's really mysterious and beautiful. Okay. Uranus
is the ruler of Aquarius. I compare it to like Einstein. It's like the Einstein planet. It's like got the crazy hair. It's like really inventive, really electric.
Yeah.
So it rules over electricity, inventions, genius. It is like things that are sudden, abrupt, things that you can't predict. They're like, it's so unpredictable. You can't even, like, if you see a Uranus transit happening, you know something that you can't even begin to predict is going to happen.
Interesting.
So like, it's like preparing for something that you can't prepare for.
Right. And how do you do that?
Yeah.
Frustrating. Last one's Pluto.
Pluto packs a fucking punch.
Yeah.
So Pluto rules Scorpio. It's the modern ruler of Scorpio. And it's deep, it's penetrating. It rules things that are taboo. It rules things that are shameful. It rules sex, death, debt, taxes, like anything like transformative.
Yeah.
And kind of like anything that would be considered like the dark underbelly of a thing. It's like, it's very exposing.
Yeah.
It's like the investigator.
Talk to me about, as like an example, like, didn't you say that the United States is going through its Pluto return?
Correct.
So what, in a time where we are just a hot dumpster fire of a country right now, and things are falling a fucking part at the seam. What does that look like when speaking in astrology terms with like the United States is going through its Pluto return? What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. So just like humans have birth charts, countries, events,
this podcast
has a birth chart.
P.S. guys, Chloe made a birth chart for this podcast.
Yeah, we planned the launch of our podcast around good astrology.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're wondering why we're so successful,
Jesus, relax, little lady.
But so when the U.S. was born, there's a commonly used chart called the Sibley chart. There's a few different charts like with debated birth times, but the Sibley chart is the most used birth chart for the United States, and it works basically when you compare the transits against it.
Okay.
So that's why it's the most widely accepted.
Got it.
So in the Sibley chart, well, in any chart, because Pluto moves so slow, Pluto in the United States birth chart is at, I think, 28 degrees or 26 degrees of Capricorn.
We'll have to get into degrees another
Degrees
time.
are another thing. But there's 30 degrees in a sign. 0 degree is the first. 29 degrees is the last degree of a sign. So it's at 26 degrees of Capricorn. When you have a Saturn return or a Pluto return, it basically means that when the thing was born, this planet was in a certain place, and it's now with the way it moves around the sun, that planet, Saturn, Pluto, the way it moves around the sun, and when it comes back to the same place that it was when that thing was born is called the return.
Okay.
So Pluto is returning to 26, or it already has. It has returned to 26 degrees of Capricorn.
Okay.
But the return itself lasts for the entire time that planet is back in that sign again.
Okay.
So Pluto first entered Capricorn again for the first time in 250-ish years, because that's how long it takes to orbit the sun. It returned to the sign of Capricorn for the first time in 200-ish years in 2008. So upon Pluto entering the sign of Capricorn, we get the crash of the stock market.
Right.
And usually, and this isn't to fearmonger, but a lot of times like how a planet enters a sign is a lot of the times like similar themes to how it exits the sign.
Bitchin'.
And it's just interesting that we're in another housing crisis and dealing with like economy issues and inflation and a lot of things that contributed to that initial crash. So Capricorn rules over infrastructure, government, and like kind of long-standing things. Pluto is here to like
fuck that shit up.
Yeah. It's like here to expose things that are operating not in integrity and to expose like anything that's like shameful, taboo, or problematic in the system. And I would say a massive theme of the last decade plus, almost 2 decades, 15 years, I don't know, I can't math.
Crazy though.
Is like a lot of themes around the failings of our government
Mm-hmm.
and the like exposing kind of like that underbelly of like how like corrupt Pluto, excuse me, is also corruption.
Yeah.
Exposing all the corruption of our infrastructure, Capricorn.
Okay.
So those are the themes that are up for debate. Pluto specifically, it's on that 250-ish year cycle. There's that kind of saying about like, a democracy in history only lasts about 200 years. It's referring to that Pluto cycle because usually there's like a massive restructuring
Okay.
when you have that Pluto return.
So I wonder
We're kind of in the middle of that right now.
Right. And when is that
Or
supposed
the end of it. So
Thank God.
we've been kind of going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius with retrogrades. Retrogrades are when a planet from our vantage point on Earth appears to be moving backwards and it appears to go back into sometimes the sign before, and then before it goes forward again into the sign that it had already moved into. So we had cleared a Capricorn. We had moved on into Aquarius. And then it started retrograding, and it's done this a couple times over the last 2 years where there's like there's this transition period where it's been in Aquarius, then it moves back into Capricorn, then forward into Aquarius and back and forth. So we're having the last retrograde where it moves back into Capricorn, and it's happening during our elections this fall.
So yeah, shit's going to get real weird and real fucked up. And I think that just is a really, like, you've been using that example a lot, like when we talk, like just personally. And so I think it's like really a good example of like, if you're gonna like what Pluto represents and how I do think that like, that's where I find astrology so interesting is really specific examples like that, where it's like Pluto represents all of these things and we're watching it unfold in the way that it's believed to or that it does represent, however you want to look at it. I just think that's like a really prime example of like, it's kind of weird how specific this shit can get. Like, that's crazy to me. This is one of the most crazy times politically the United States has ever experienced. And I don't know, like Pluto's never retrograded before in our country's whole life, right?
Well, not that it hasn't retrograded.
I mean, not retrograded, the return.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
sorry, wrong language.
You're totally fine. Yeah, exactly. It hasn't, this is the first time that it's been back in Capricorn
we're
in
a
our
baby
nation's
country.
history.
Yeah.
So, and it's also affecting other countries as well. And you can see that with what's playing out in the world.
Yeah, I'd be curious to look at like the birth chart, if you will, of like France, who just went through major political, all the things, their election was
and
huge.
if you look at too, like the astrology of Palestine and the astrology of Ukraine and the astrology of Russia, like all these places that are having like massive
movements,
for better
devastation.
Or worse. You can look at their transits and it directly speaks to what's going on. Also, the leaders of the country, the way their charts are being aspected with the current transits as well. Like it's not just the country's astrology, but it's also their leaders at the same time. So it's interesting.
And then how those two different charts are interacting with one another.
And I can put, we can add links to resources if anyone's curious about like diving into any of these topics.
Sure. Because obviously it's layered, right? Like even if we're like doing the simplest terms, like I just think, well, actually you covered retrogrades without me even having to ask. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think that it does take a lot of time and it does take like baby steps. And like you said, you've been studying for 8 years. It's something that it has to like build upon itself. Like you have to like master an understanding of one layer and keep going.
Building,
right?
Because it just gets more and more niche.
Yeah, exactly. And I just like want to call to that. Like, I feel like we're having this conversation and like, it's not really to educate, but just really to give like a fun little bare bones, you know? And like, I think that humans, psychologically speaking, like we all just want to know about ourselves. Right. And I think that that's where astrology can get really appealing. I mean, that's what kicked it off for you, right? You were like, I want to have a better understanding of myself. Yeah. So I'm going to look into this and I'm going to roll with it. And it is so, I think that's what can really grab people, you know, is it's like, we all just want to understand the why of ourselves, why of our loved ones.
I think we just all want to feel understood.
Girl.
I think that's really what it comes back to. And like, to wrap it up, it's like, that's, I mean, a huge part of why it's been so transformative and like such a useful tool for me to process life.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I respect the hell out of that. And I would like be lying if I said that I don't like love astrology and talk about it with you. I do. I just think that I let my like passion kind of die down to the point where I'm just not on the same level anymore, to where like, you know, and I'm okay with that. I have found other ways to like,
you have other like hobbies and interests and like passions. And I have spoke to this, but I have a very obsessive personality.
Correct.
So like for me, like I found this and I became obsessed.
And it's very you. Like, I think that there's no one in my life that has this ability. And I think it's just about like how incorporating it, like it's going to inevitably be a part of this project. So we might as well just like confront it. Yeah. Confront the taboo of it, you know?
I love it.
Anyway, I'll let you stop talking. I'm done drilling you with questions.
No, I love it. This was so fun.
Right?
This was so fun.
I figured you'd have fun with it.
If people have like more questions, like reach out to us, comment on like you can comment on Spotify, you can comment on YouTube, you can comment on
TikTok is up and running.
TikTok is up and running.
See?
Yeah. You can comment, hardly. And you made the account.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Entering an email is the same thing as actually put regardless.
Anyway, so we are whatever social platform you follow us on, hopefully all of them.
Yeah, it'd be rude if you wouldn't.
Because get taboo. Do you really support us if you don't follow us on every platform?
Truly.
Also share with your friends. Like,
we don't plug enough.
If you feel called to like share this with anyone, like that would mean so much to us. I'm not asking like everybody to like go post us. But also if you want to do it.
No, I am. Like if you're listening to this and you support us, or like we've had so many
find value in this conversation, you're probably hopefully not alone in finding value.
Yeah.
And it would mean the world to us. It would help us to grow, reach more people, help more people, and like connect with more people.
And like, honestly, a lot of our viewership is our friends and family. And I'm like, at least from my
aspect. We have some randoms in like, we have some viewers in like Mexico, Greece, Ireland.
No, that's hot.
Australia.
Oh my God. Yeah. And like to them, like that's just such a huge honor to have people listen to us in that way. Friends and family, let's up it a little bit. Like, can you share now? Like it's one thing to listen and I love you so much for that. But like, can you please like repost, like help us out here? Cause now we're trying to get some traction. We've got this, we're doing this, like fucking repost us. Oh my God. But to all the randoms, like, thank you. We love you.
Yeah, we love you. How did you find us? But all that to say, if you have questions, if you want to hear about more topics, if there's something we didn't like get into deep enough, or that you'd like a follow-up conversation, let us know. Like,
we're going to follow up.
We love the feedback.
Yeah.
Like the feedback has been so helpful. So continue.
Yeah. Actual feedback too. Like, obviously, like,
gas us up. We're being a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Too.
Gas us up, but like call us out. Yeah. I think we have to.
It's both. We can take both.
All right.
Okay.
Deuces.
Illy, bye.
Ghost. Oh my God. You and your fucking lips.
I know. It's stupid.
Okay. So good. One last thing before you go. There is no us without you. Go like and subscribe to our show on your favorite streaming service and give us a follow on all socials at Let's Get Taboo. Chat with y'all next time.